There you go. The one and only, the great Richie Benaud, one of the greatest commentators we have seen with his summation of the underarm one-dayer in 1981. That featured another fantastic commentator who joins me now, Ian Smith. G'day, Smithy. Thank you so much for your time, mate. Richie Benaud, he pretty much summed up, I guess, what most New Zealanders were feeling back then, didn't he?
Yeah, he did actually, and I don't think anyone in the world could have put it into better words, really, and staying as polite as he possibly could. So, hey, look, I was just listening to it, actually. I hadn't heard that for a long, long time, and I was just thinking how ironic it was in my particular situation that I was actually out on the field and was lucky enough years and years later to spend so much time with Richie Benaud and listen to so many of his great quotes around cricket in all parts of the world. So, small world in that respect, but yeah, a hell of a memorable day, mate. But I'm not quite sure it sort of pales into its significance what we're all going through right now, doesn't it, really?
It certainly does. It certainly does. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on, mate, because, you know, we can get a little bit caught up in coronavirus and COVID-19, and it can become, I think, all-consuming. And I wanted to provide a little bit of a break. And you've had such a wonderful career. If you think back to that one, I mean, there was also the Martin Sneddon wicket, the wonderful catch that wasn't. Could one? I mean, do you think you played in a game with more drama and controversy ever?
I don't think so. When you look at the fact that Snedge took that great catch, and I was right next to Greg Chappell the whole time because I was close to the wicket, and he was unmoving. He was just like carved out of granite. He hardly batted an eyelid. He wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't taking anyone's advice. He wasn't listening to anyone's point of view. He was just rock solid out there, and you could have hurled all the abuse in the world at him from a personal point of view, and I don't think it would have got through to him. So he was not going anywhere. So it was a freakish day, a freakish sort of 24 hours, really, with the aftermath and that sort of thing. And if I have to parallel it to an afternoon, of drama, etc., and everything happening in a game that you didn't expect to happen. Maybe the World Cup final last year,
yes.
In terms of a commentator, would parallel it in terms of absolutely stuff that just happened that you would not expect it to when you paid your ticket to go into the ground or when you sat down to watch it on television. Everything that unfolded that afternoon too, I think, probably rivals it.
And the thing is, I know it's controversial, but that's what makes sport great. That's why we're still talking about that game so many years on, and we'll continue to talk about the other match for many, many years as well, isn't it? I mean, if the DRS had been around in those days, you guys would have won that game probably quite comfortably.
Yeah, I think so. One of the worst decisions of the lot, Richard Hadlee's LBW, and he was flying at the time, and he was one player who was capable of winning that game for us in one over, and he got a shocking LBW to start that last over of Trevor Chappell. So, and that sort of kicked it off. But it is good, and it's great that there's enough footage of it around that you can pass it down the generations because people without that footage, people probably couldn't quite believe what was unfolding in front of them. So it's great that we're seeing that, and I think one of the small upsides of what we're going through now is that we're seeing quite a lot of archive football, archive rugby, archive cricket going on, and for me it's quite good, Jim, because I've always had a policy of focusing on the next game, and because that's the one that's important from a commentary point of view, and not reliving all the time the other one, but. Now that there isn't a next game on the horizon, I've had a chance to sit down and watch a lot of these games, and it's quite amazing how things flood back to you from what you've been seeing and what you thought you saw and what you obviously didn't see. So look, that's the upside for me, the slight upside.
What was it like keeping wickets to Richard Hadlee?
Well, I guess I've always said it was the best seat in the house, except that that you had to be on the edge of your seat because you're likely to be involved at pretty much every ball. He beat the bat so often that you were never able to really relax when he was coming into bowl. I know you shouldn't with any bowler, but with Richard Hadlee, you just had to take that up a notch. He was a perfectionist. I think he had the perfect action. you study bowling actions around the world, and everyone is unique in their own different way. There are little idiosyncrasies that that they have themselves. But I think in the purest, simplest action, when he cut it down from his long run up to his shorter run up, I think that was nigh on perfect. He used to come to me if he felt it wasn't going right. He would, if you envisage a cricket ball and you put your index finger and the next finger alongside the seam, and he'd say, look, he wanted that to come over at 12 o'clock. So you've got your two fingers alongside the seam, and you look at the clock, and he wanted those to come bolt upright at 12 o'clock. And he would come every now and then when he felt it wasn't going right. He'd say, I think I'm closer to like 1 o'clock. Can you keep an eye on it for me? And I'd be saying to him, like, mate, it's just hard enough as it is, focusing on catching it anyway, but to look that closely at it. So I used to ask either Jeff Crow or whoever was standing at first slip if he could keep an eye on it, and we'd sort of say to him, yeah, you might be right. There might just be a little kink there, and that's how much of a perfectionist he was. And he was. I really, people ask me a lot. It's just absolutely astonishing how good he was for mine. I mean, people will pick their greatest world 11s, and he should be in it. You just can't get everyone in it, but he should be in it because of what he achieved. And his record is simply unbelievable when you look at the amount of test matches he played to some of these guys that racked up over 100 and compare his number of wickets and ratio. Unbelievable.
You're pretty handy yourself, but there's a little stat that Wikipedia threw up that I need to ask you about because it's intriguing. Best bowling, 2 for 11. I don't. Where did that happen?
I don't know. How 2 for 11?
According to this. Oh well.
Oh, it was not an international cricket. I can promise you that. I bowled in a test match in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And the West Indies, the last test match, the West Indies needed, I don't know, 15 to win or something to beat us. So I asked Jeff if I could have a bowl, and he said no problem. Martin Crowe said I'll wicket keep because it's the only thing in the game I've never done in Test cricket. He's opened the bowling, he's done everything else. So he said I'd love to wicket keep. So he wicket kept, and as a team, we decided that we wouldn't let him touch the ball. It was only going to be a matter of 5 or 6 overs. So in the run chase, we decided that I would bowl and someone else, I think John Bracewell or someone else was going to bowl as well. But we were going to make sure we never beat the bat. So we had to tell Gordon Greenwich and Desmond Haynes about what we were doing. So they weren't allowed to leave the ball because that would mean it would go through to the keeper. And the other guys who were fielding it would always throw it to the bowler's end. So if they worked it down to fine leg would run up and throw it to the bowler's end. So Martin Crowe would be up at the stumps expecting the throw, and it would never come to him. So it was a little game within a game, but he finally cottoned on to it right towards the end, and I think someone threw one to him to make him happy. But, that was my great bowling. I think 3 overs, none for 10 or something against the great Greenwich and Haynes, which I was pretty proud of.
Fantastic. You have a remarkable strike rate in one-day cricket, 99 runs per 100 balls. But I actually want to talk to you about the 1990 cricket test against India when you scored 140 runs in the third session on the first day at Eden Park. Mate, you must have been seeing that cricket ball like it was a beach ball.
You don't, look, it was an interesting day that because I lived in Devonport with, in those days, Martin Snedden and Danny Morrison were very, very close to where I lived as well. So we went, we carpooled to the test match that morning. And not one of us would believe that we would be involved in the game in the way that we were because they both batted with me in that last session as well. So it was quite weird in that respect. But look, I remember we were, I think, 7 for 130 on a green wicket, and I walked out to bat, and Richard Hadlee was there, and he basically said, look, if it's up, I think it's got to go, and if not, your name will be on that ball at some stage. So, do what you can. And we got through to tea, and we'd sort of pulled it around a wee bit at that point. And then I had no idea. Look, I just walked out after. I fully expected to be wicket-keeping that session, to be the way the game was going. And it just kept coming off the middle of the bat, and it just kept going over the onside, basically. they bowled very generously. They bowled nice and straight, so it was able in that small boundaries at Eden Park on the onside were very, very accessible at that time. So hey, look, it was just wonderful. We just kept going, and in between Otis and Martin Snedden batted for me for a long time. We're almost laughing about it. We're pretty relaxed about the whole deal because we hadn't batted ourselves into safety, but we got ourselves into a sort of respectable situation, and we just kept going. And I had no idea about the numbers. I had no idea about the records side of things. It just kept hitting, and they were sort of in the paper the next day. But I guess it's the oldest saying in the world. I guess every dog has his day. That was mine, and the good thing it came, I guess, from a team point of view when it was needed. In other words, we were deep in the crap really, so we were able to get out of it, and I think we drew that test and won the series against India, which was pretty cool.
You know how it works in a studio, mate. I'm getting flooded with text messages, people asking me to ask you things. Can you ask Smithy to tell the story about Imran Khan and how women adored him?
Oh God, yeah.
Can we tell it? I don't know. Can we tell it on here?
I can. Look, hey, it's no secret. I mean, you only have to read the English newspapers and look at the women that he was associated with over the years. And I mean, he was an Adonis. I mean, Jimmy, I can tell a story now. What can I? We didn't play. There was a benefit game or a charity game in Auckland. In between test matches or something, and we were invited as New Zealand cricketers to go and take part and have a bit of fun with the game, but predominantly just mixed with the sponsors and that sort of thing. And it was down in, I think it was in St Mary's Bay or somewhere down that side of Auckland on a domain. And it was a beautiful day. It was all set up with marquees and Imran, it was rumoured that Imran and a couple of the Pakistanis might make an appearance. Well, later in the day, he did. And he turned up looking absolutely like a god in a sort of a muslin-y shirt with jeans and sandals, and his hair, like his hair was all over the joint with dark glasses. And he had a slight entourage with him. And honestly, I can tell you, from my wife included, all the women, everyone there just absolutely took their eyes off what was happening in front of them and on Imran Khan. That was his presence. When he came in the room, absolutely. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what you were or what you looked like or whatever. When Imran was in the room, you were small bickies, not even one to factor in. But adored, one of the most adored gentlemen. But in Pakistan, of course, and now I think Prime Minister now still, and he simply was probably the biggest movie star I think I've been involved in cricket with. Yeah, he's a dude. He's a dude, Jimmy.
He's a dude, all right. This is an interesting one. Is your middle name Stockley a family name?
Yes, it is. Actually, it goes back to Scottish heritage, really, but it's on my father's side. He had a lot of siblings. I'll guess it's 7. Brothers and sisters, there might even been 8, but one of them will get on to me shortly, and every one of them, male and female, had Stockley as one of their names as well.
Nice.
And then it's gradually filtered away a wee bit, so some haven't. My sons have all got Stockley involved in their name, and the most famous woman in our family was the first New Zealand women's professional golfer was Marilyn Smith, not the American one, but Marilyn Janet Stockley Smith. Oh, and nice. She also played softball for New Zealand as well. So, there's plenty of Stockleys floating around. In fact, I think a couple of them have actually even hyphenated their name as to Stockley Smith.
This is one that I'm often asked, and I'm sure you are as well. We'll start with the rugby side of it first, which is, in your commentating career, who's the best rugby player you've commentated on? For me, mate, I find it difficult because Jonah Lomu was a colossus, and I reported on most of his career. Christian Cullen was completely freakish in what he could do. For me, Dan Carter's the most complete first 5 I've ever seen. But when I'm asked, I always get to the point and I say, but the greatest rugby player I've ever witnessed live was Richie McCaw. His influence on a game was off the charts. What about for you?
Yeah. Okay. When I was I go back a long way. I go back a lot further than you, Jimmy. Look, the most complete, I think the most complete rugby performance I ever saw by an individual was Dan Carter's Test match performance.
Yes.
In Wellington.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was probably the one-off, most complete all-round performances I've ever commentated on or witnessed. I agree with you about Richie McCaw. I think some people who wouldn't know just how valuable he was to the All Blacks in terms of what he inspired people to do on the park and how he carried himself off it. I think he's certainly one of the greatest athletes I think I've ever commentated on in any code. But look, I go back as far as Michael Jones, Sir Michael Jones. I think Sir Michael Jones, as he was back then, was one of the most freakish rugby players or athletes I've ever seen who could have, when you look at how the game has changed, Jimmy, and you think who in your life probably could have transcended the game, maybe adjustments to play the game today that he was playing from the game he was playing back then. I think Michael Jones probably was the best equipped athlete to do that. So I'll never forget him. Cully, yeah, absolutely Cully. And Jonah, I'm with you on those guys 100%. But it's just I'm so lucky that I get to stand there on halfway. I think it's well over 130 or 40 times now with All Black Test matches. And it never changes, that moment when the anthem and the haka and the game kicks off. Never, ever changes, because if you're on the sideline, you are lucky enough to see the faces of the players as they walk out or jog out, and you see just the intensity that's involved. And if you can't get involved in that and you can't get up to that level, then you perhaps don't deserve to be there.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Michael Jones. Oh, in fact, I was showing. It's funny, we've become friends with John Kerwin again. He actually played with my brother at age grade level, Smithy, but because of my work with Sky, we've become good mates again. And my daughters know him, and they were sort of talking the other day about, was he? One of them said, was he quite good at rugby? So I dialed up YouTube, and not only did they get to see how wonderful John Kerwin was, but Michael Jones features so many times. JK is scoring a try, and Michael Jones is right on his shoulder, his shoulder.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, the ability to run the angles that he had to with the speed that he had, but just the sense that, the sixth sense or seventh sense that he had to be there at the right time was just, I would say he'd probably say it was God-given, and he might be right.
He might be right. What about a cricketer that you've commentated on?
Well, obviously we just talked about Sir Richard Hadlee. He's without doubt the greatest cricketer I ever played with. Greatest cricketer I've commentated on. It's hard, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it is. It's pretty hard. I mean, we didn't see the best of him out here, but this guy Coley is something, and he is something really, really special. So he's got to be in that bracket. But I was lucky enough to commentate Warren, of course, and his combination with McGrath and those guys. So, look, Brian Lara. I played against Brian Lara, but I commentated a lot on Brian Lara when he was flying and that Caribbean cover drive, etc. And Viv Richards, to stand behind Richards and Greg Chappell. That was pretty good too, to be honest, because those kind of players, Jimmy, they have a presence at the crease that others don't. There's been some magnificent players, but there are some guys that walk out there and they just own the ground before they face the ball because of their presence, their record, but the way they carry themselves and the look on their face says, I'm going to win this. They just say, I'm going to win this with their presence alone. So they were the great ones. I look hard to really to go past Warren. To be fair, the art is so difficult, and the way he has impacted the game, and since too. I mean, you don't sell your hat for $1 million, do you? I mean, just like that. He puts his baggy green on, and within a week he gets $1 million for it. I think that sort of sums it up. And I think he was expecting 400,000 or 500,000 at the most. I mean, more than twice Bradman's cap. It's unbelievable. So to commentate that quality and that character I think Mark Richardson's probably spewing in a bucket in the corner right now, but I think Shane Warne.
I won John Wright's book from a Murray Decker show. And I can't remember what the question was, but the answer was Ian Smith. I was working in a pizza shop, and I knew the answer. I rang up, I said, that's Ian Smith, and I won the book. That's a long way of getting to the point where in that book, the funniest chapter, I think, in the book, or the best chapter, is when he talks about if he was a fast bowler, who he would like to bowl to. If you were a fast bowler, which of the guys that bounce them around your ears, maybe give me three that you'd absolutely like to have been able to hurl them at.
Oh, Malcolm Marshall, top of the list. I'd have loved that opportunity to have the pace and fire to give him a couple back. One of my great friends these days and commentary colleague Mikey Holding, he gave me kittens as well. And I think probably I'd have to maybe Colin Croft too. That wouldn't be bad, to have a crack at him. But mainly the West Indies, mate, who during that time were not fun to play against, but fun to talk about afterwards if you got through it okay. So I think it would be principally those guys. I wouldn't mind giving Ian Botham a quick bouncer every now and then. He gave a couple, but by and large, those guys there, yeah. And right now, probably, no, I won't say that because I'll get in trouble. No, those would be the ones.
And mate, you and I have had a few beers over the years. If you could have a beer with three cricketers, who would they be?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, Beefy certainly, and I've had plenty. So I never turned down that opportunity. Alan Border, a terrific guy. Yeah. What a great battler he was, but a great socialiser and a hell of a good bloke, Alan Border. And I think those two guys from the time that I played with. I'd probably, of the modern era, I'd love to be able to have another beer with Martin Crowe, mate. That would be cool.
Oh, boy. Yep. Wouldn't it? We'll end it there, I think, mate. Ian, thank you so much for your time. I really, really do appreciate it. I could talk to you for hours. Absolutely hours. You're an absolute treasure. Thanks so much, mate.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, listen to everybody. Stay at home. Listen to Jim Kay. Stay at home. Stay safe. And we'll see you on the other side with some great sports shortly, eh? Take
care. Ian Smith there. What a wonderful man and what a wonderful recollection. And I don't know about you, but when he said Martin Crowe, that pretty much knocked me for six. It is 20 minutes away from midday.